Thresholds. We cross them every day, from room to room, from outside to inside and back again, from here to there, from anywhere to everywhere. From age to age, each threshold offers an opportunity for change, for renewal, for transformation, from what we were and what we are to what we can be. In this hour and in this place, we cross a threshold from our day-to-day everydayness into space and time attuned to the other, to the sacred, to the holy, into an awareness of new life, pregnant with possibilities. How will we be renewed in this moment? How will we be changed by this hour? How will we be transformed through this gathering of beloved community? Come, you thirsty, longing souls. Come and let us worship together. I invite you now to rise in body or in spirit and join me in singing our opening hymn, As Tranquil Streams. It's number 145 in your gray hymnal.
As tranquil streams that meet and merge and flow as one to seek the sea, our kindred hearts and minds unite to build a church that shall be free. Free from the bonds that bind the mind to narrow thought and lifeless creed. Free from a social code that fails to serve the cause of human need. A freedom that reveres the past but trusts the dawning future more, and bids the soul in search of truth adventure boldly and explore. Prophetic church, the future waits your liberating ministry. Go forward in the power of love, proclaim the truth that makes us free.
And I remind you to remain risen as we light our chalice and then say our covenant words.
For this morning's chalice lighting, I offer these words that were written for a Shabbat candle lighting by the Rabbi Brant Rosen. Bless the fires kindled, the energy generated, the sparks igniting the work of creation day after day. Bless the tasks completed and the work unfinished, the struggles ongoing, the dreams of transformation yet to be fulfilled. Bless all you have made, all you have created, and let it go. Let it vanish into the past, like the sun sinking behind the distant horizon. Now, bless your tired soul in the sweet darkness of this new day. It's time to enter the world to come. And now, please join in saying our congregational covenant words, first in English and then in Spanish. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, thus do we covenant. La doctrina de esta iglesia es el amor. La búsqueda de la verdad es su sacramento. Y el servicio es su oración. Vivir juntos en paz, buscar el conocimiento en libertad, servir a la humanidad en comunión. Este es nuestro pacto. Please be seated. Good morning. And welcome to the weekly worship service of Emerson Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Todd Covert. I use he and him as my pronouns, and it is my privilege to serve as worship associate for this morning's service. 2 pieces of housekeeping before we go any further. Please be sure that your electronic devices are silenced, and we thank you for helping keep our community safe and healthy by wearing a mask during our service. Named for the writer and Unitarian minister Ralph Waldo Emerson, this church is a home for open and inclusive spirituality in the western San Fernando Valley, where we hold to no creed and strive to be a place where you can bring your whole self, your full identity, your questioning mind, your expansive spirit. Let us begin today by acknowledging that our church is on traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Tataviam, Chumash, Tongva, and Quiche peoples. The forces of colonialism and imperialism and racism stole these lands and suppressed the languages and the cultural traditions of those who lived here for generations. We commit to honoring their elders, past, present, and future, for they hold the memories, the traditions, and the culture of this area. We are gathered today for worship both in our physical church in Canoga Park and virtually via Zoom. To our members and friends joining us in both spaces, I extend a welcome and a thank you for your ongoing commitment, fellowship, and support. This beloved community would be less without any one of you, and your presence is always deeply felt and appreciated. If you're new to Emerson, whether in the sanctuary or online, I hope you find this service spiritually and intellectually engaging and that you feel truly welcomed. We encourage you to sign either our physical guest book in the foyer or our virtual guest book online in the chat in Zoom, linked from the chat in Zoom. In either place, you can sign up to receive our weekly e-news. And if you'd like to get to know us better, please join us for coffee hour in our pavilion, behind the doors to my right, your left, if you're in the sanctuary, or our virtual coffee hour in breakout rooms on Zoom. Our monthly worship theme is transformation this month, and today's worship is entitled, How to Age Gracefully. Not only individuals, but institutions age, and with aging, inevitably comes change. This year, Emerson marks its 70th year. Today and throughout the year, we'll take time to consider the significance of this congregation and its service to the wider community, as well as an appreciation of its evolution over the course of its existence. Personally, I'm neither old enough nor have I been a member long enough to bear witness to that particular evolution. I am, however, a bit older than the larger denomination, the Unitarian Universalist Association, by almost a year. And unlike many UUs of my generation, I did actually grow up in a Unitarian family. I participated in Unitarian religious education and worship as a child, and then on my own for a brief period as a young adult. I drifted away from the denomination in my early 20s and didn't return until I was in my late 50s. Although I wasn't witness to the many changes, both sweeping and incremental, that the UUA undertook over its 60-plus year existence, I did encounter the fruits of those changes when I rejoined. Not least, what I had experienced as a youth as Unitarianism, a liberal Protestant denomination united by a profound humanism and a proud history of social activism, has become over the years a home for spiritual seekers from all faith traditions, a new faith community of Unitarian Universalists, for whom commitment to justice work has become arguably its defining creed, at least from my perspective. Apropos of that experience, I can say that communities and institutions most surely can change over a lifetime every bit as much as an individual might. I look forward to learning more about Emerson's transformative experiences today and over the coming months. Now, in a moment, we're going to take time to greet our neighbors here in the sanctuary and in the chat on Zoom. During that time, you may wish to add a joy or concern to be shared aloud during the service to our Book of Life behind Kevin at the piano, or our virtual book of life linked from the chat and Zoom. And so now, in the spirit of fellowship, let's take a moment to greet our neighbors.
This one first, okay. Oh, okay, we are. Okay, so the first time we do all three. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Yes, okay. I was planning on doing that. Oh, okay. Right, okay. All right, right now? Okay, perfect. Oh, really? Wow, interesting. Parallels, so interesting.
It is good to be together this morning. I'm also glad to see so many of you made it despite the time change this morning. And I'm just imagining there's probably a few more people on Zoom this morning than normally, just because it's a little bit easier. So welcome to everyone. I'm the Reverend Matthew McHale. My pronouns are he and him. It's my pleasure to serve this congregation as its minister. So this morning, for our story for all ages, I have a story called Effie's Image by N.L. Sharp. The morning Effie Armstrong turned 82 years old, she pushed herself out of bed. She picked up a framed photograph and traced the image with her finger. Effie said, "You're as lovely as ever." But when she stared at herself in the mirror, her hair was no longer black and curly, her skin was no longer silky and smooth, and her stooped back could not hold her body straight. "Those days are gone," Effie said, and took herself back to bed. Effie moped around her house for so long that friends and neighbors began to worry. And then one day, there was a knock at the door. "Amanda Jones, what brings you here so early in the morning?" Effie asked. "I brought Boots over to keep you company while I'm at school." Before Effie could say the word, the kitten jumped out of Amanda's arms. He disappeared under the sofa, and Amanda disappeared out the door. At 3 o'clock, Amanda was back. "Did you and Boots have a good time?" she asked. "No, we did not," Effie said. "He has scratched my piano and tangled my knitting. He's even helped himself to my bowl of ice cream. That cat is nothing but a nuisance. Please take him home now." Now, Amanda was just trying to be helpful, and so she tried something else, and she said, "Well, my dad needs someone to help him out down at the church. I told him you would be perfect." So the next day, Effie headed to church, and she scooted around the office in the soft blue rolling chair. She swapped recipes with the janitor. She watered the plants and shared secrets with the mailman. But then things started to go wrong. The copy machine jammed, the computer would not turn on, and the telephone rang and rang. "This job is not for me," said Effie. "I'm going home." "Maybe you should go to school," said Amanda. "School," said Effie. "Now why would I want to go to school?" "Because it's fun. You get to read and write and draw pictures." "Imagine that," Effie muttered. "An old lady like me at the school. Who ever heard of such a crazy idea?" But the more she thought about it, the more she liked it. So the next morning, Effie met Amanda at the corner and walked with her to school. After stopping at the office to say good morning, they headed for Amanda's classroom. "Welcome, Effie," said Ms. Carter. "I hope you don't mind if I put you to work." "Of course not," said Effie. "That's why I'm here." Effie went to work immediately. She listened to stories, she played math games, she admired wiggly teeth, and she tied shoelaces. Before she knew it, it was time for lunch. "What's that smell?" Effie asked. "Chicken soup and cinnamon rolls," Amanda said. "Good," said Effie. "I'm starved." Effie was on her second cinnamon roll when the third grade teacher saw her. She asked Effie to stay and listen to the stories that her students had written. And just as Effie and Amanda were leaving, the fifth grade teacher caught her. He invited Effie back the next day to watch a video that his students made. "Imagine that," Effie said. "Fifth graders are making movies. I'll definitely be here for that." And she was. In fact, Effie walked to school with Amanda every day that week. Soon, 1 week became 2 weeks, and 2 weeks became a month. Some days she went home at noon, and some days she stayed the whole day. She played the piano. She taught the teachers how to knit, and she showed students how to make homemade ice cream. They taught her how to run a copy machine and turn on a computer. Before long, no one could remember a time when Effie wasn't a regular part of every school day. One day in May, the principal called everyone to the gym. "What's going on?" Effie asked the cooks as she passed them in the hall. This sounds important." "It is. You don't want to miss this." When all the students were seated on the floor, the principal began to speak. "This year, a new friend has joined our school community. She's not a student or a teacher, but every day she's here, helping in every way she can. Effie Armstrong, would you please come forward?" Effie looked around. Everyone was smiling. Amanda grabbed her hand. "Come on," she whispered. "They're waiting for you." Together they walked to the front of the room, and the principal handed a wrapped package to Amanda, who in turn handed the package to Effie. "This is for you," she said, "because you make every day a great day at school." Effie opened the present, and she took out a framed photograph. In the picture, she was reading a book to the students in Ms. Carter's classroom. Her back was softly bowed, her cheeks were wrinkled, and her gray hair was falling out of its bun. Effie traced the image with her finger. "Effie," she thought, "you're as lovely as ever." And when she stared at the sea of smiling faces looking back at her, she knew that it was true. So, before our kids head off to their religious education class, I invite you to join me in saying our Unitarian Universalist affirmation. You can do the hand motions if you know them. We are Unitarian Universalists, a people of open minds, loving hearts, and welcoming hands.
Each week during our service, we take up an offering to support the work of this church, both within the congregation and in the wider community. And each week, we share half of your donations with an organization in the community that aligns with the mission of this church. This month's Share the Plate recipient is the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund. Their Gaza Relief and Recovery campaign aims to address urgent humanitarian needs and support long-term recovery efforts in Gaza. The funds raised will primarily focus on immediate relief, providing essential medical supplies, food, medical treatment, clean water, and other necessities for families affected by the ongoing war. The campaign will also support rebuilding healthcare facilities and offer trauma counseling and mental health support for children. They can be found on the web at www.pcrf.net. You can donate via the Breeze app or online at donate.emersonuuc.org, or you can send a check to our address in Canoga Park. I now invite the ushers to come forward and take up the offering.
From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live.
Each week in our service, we take time to lift up those joys and sorrows from within our community and in the wider world. This week in our Book of Life, our music director, Kevin Matthey, shares an update that his doctor has discontinued chemo for him, and tomorrow he starts a trial program of immunotherapy. In our virtual Book of Life, Nicole writes, 2 joys. Glad to finally get through all the bureaucracy that both my son and I can start our physical therapy. So many I's to dot and T's to cross. And also It always feels weird to read things like this, but I also want to thank Reverend Matthew for his follow-up email to the Palestine Teach-In, reminding us that there are many, many things we can do to be of service. And I'll just share my gratitude for those people who showed up last Sunday after the service. It was a powerful event of learning and connecting across differences, and I'm pretty sure it was the largest gathering we've actually had at Emerson. In the entirety of my time here, we had about over 150 people, about 90 plus in person and 60 plus online, and so it was powerful. And thanks to those who helped out with it as well. And then finally, Susan Siskin writes that March 7th would have been her late husband Bert's 94th birthday. Big sigh. In a moment, I'm going to sound this singing bowl, and after I do, I invite you to speak into this space or type into the chat any joys and sorrows, any names or occasions that are on your heart this morning, and that you would like lifted up into this beloved community in this, our embracing meditation. All that we hold in the silent sanctuary of our hearts, all that we have shared and all that we hold in the silent sanctuary of our hearts, we offer these into the embrace of this beloved community. I invite you now to join me in a spirit of meditation or prayer. Maybe that means finding a comfortable position, closing your eyes or softening your gaze, taking a breath in and out, breathing at whatever pace feels right for you. Spirit of life, known by many names, yet by no name fully known. We gather today with hopes and dreams, and also with fears and wounds. May we be reminded that all things come and go, and that today's joys and today's sorrows will in time give way to those of tomorrow, and that those of us who have strength to share today ought to do so while we can, and that those who are in need ought to allow ourselves to receive, for tomorrow those roles might well be reversed. Spirit of life, mother, father, parent of us all, help us to remember those who are not here with us today, those who need what we have found here, and those who have what we here need. May we always be open to growth and change, to movement, to grace. In the name of all that is holy and in all the holy names that have ever been uttered, let us say, Amen, Ashe, and blessed be. invite you to join me in singing Becoming.
I am who I'm becoming. I am all I have done. I am who I am dreaming. I've only just begun. I am who I'm becoming. I am all I have done. I am what I am dreaming. I've only just begun.
You are.
You are who you're becoming. You are all you have done. You are what you are dreaming. You've only just begun. You are who you're becoming. You are all you have done. You are what you are dreaming. You've only just begun. We are who we're becoming. We are all we have done. We are what we are dreaming. We've only just begun. We are who we're becoming. We are all we have done. We are what we are dreaming. We've only just begun.
Over the past several months, Todd, Covert, and I have been co-teaching a class on sermon writing and preaching, and it's been really wonderful. And so this morning we have a reflection that has come out of that class, and this is just the first of probably several reflections and sermons you'll be hearing over the coming months. And so I'm excited to invite Phil Koretsky up to share.
Hi. I'm a he or a him, although now that I'm older, I'm a little bit more she and her too coming in. Anyway, most of our lives, our physical and intellectual capacities are in decline. We hardly notice it unless we are top athletes or high-level thinkers. Why do you think Nobel Prize winners are usually awarded to older people who did their discoveries when in their 20s or 30s? This doesn't mean we don't grow wiser or gather more valuable experience as we age. It just means those capacities slowly diminish as we age past our 30s and 40s. This fact really made an impression on me in my early 50s. I took a class in digital editing for my work, and I knew it would be challenging, but I was in for a big surprise. In our first lesson, it took barely 30 minutes for me to see that I was falling behind, and I never caught up. It was an embarrassing experience for someone who'd always been a quick study. By my early 60s, I was struggling at work. I was forgetting my students' names and where I was in a lesson plan. When it came time for me to serve as department chair, I declined, feeling the responsibilities were just too much to handle. My colleagues began to whisper behind my back, or so I thought. But the worst part was seeing my students beginning to lose respect for me. Eventually, I decided to retire, and that's when I started asking myself, what am I good for? It was an identity crisis. Looking back now, I'm struck by my single-minded focus on work as a measure of my worth. Sure, it was accurate that my professional capacities were diminishing, but should that be the way I judge my worth? Should we compare a mature adult's value to society to an older person's? Asking what good is an old person is like asking what good are teenagers, or what good are children compared to mature adults. Is it a meaningful comparison? What good are old people? I've been seeking the answer to that question since retirement. At first, I thought it meant finding a new job that wasn't as challenging. In my case, I went back to school to study film production and used my new skills and abilities to become a sound mixer on movie sets. Looking around, I saw many of my peers getting jobs or volunteering to do work that was similar to their past professions. I found sound mixing fulfilling, but time marches on, and I slowly exited my sound work. Too many 12-hour days on my feet, holding a boom over my head in the hot sun or cold night. It's been hard to give up, but that hasn't stopped me from continuing to look for meaningful work. Earlier this year, I helped care for my daughter and my newborn grandchild. I feel lucky to be part of their lives. I've also been lucky to find meaningful activities here at Emerson. I've sung in the choir for almost 20 years, but in the last few years, I've come to relish it in new ways. I used to do it more for the pleasure of singing and the camaraderie among the choir members. Now when I sing before the congregation, I feel so much closer to you all. It feels like I'm part of something bigger than me. I think of it as my contribution to the service, to you, my worship community. I hope in some small way it may illuminate the theme of the service with greater emotional impact. And now I'm looking forward to contributing to the church as a new board member. Even this reflection I'm offering today has made my life more rewarding, and hopefully it's been valuable to you. I feel incredibly lucky to have my health, my family, this community, and hopefully many more years to enjoy them. And as time marches on, I'm sure even being useful to others will be impossible. Like many old people, I will probably end up depending on others to take care of me towards the end. So what good will I be then? I think the answer falls deeply into the spiritual realm. Some may see their value as coming from how they are seen in the eyes of God, as children of God. For some, having lived a good life is enough. And for those who no longer have the capacity to engage with others, our memory of their nurturing and their love and respect gives them value. To me, it is inescapable that I will come to an end. For now, the question, what good are old people, is bothering me less and less. I think the answer is in how each of us chooses to live the remainder of our lives. We can create our own worth for ourselves and hopefully for others. Thanks.
Now I invite you to join me in singing that last verse again of Becoming.
We are who we're becoming. We are all we have done. We are what we are dreaming. We've only just begun. We are who we're becoming. We are all we have done. We are what we are dreaming. We've only just begun.
So this next video I'm going to share with you is the title for today's service comes from this video. I saw it several years ago and have been thinking about it ever since, waiting for the right service with which to use it. And it's a video from the CBC, Canadian Broadcast Company's radio program / podcast, Wiretap, about the way we can gain wisdom and learn new things at any age, and it's about passing that wisdom on.
6-year-old. Training wheels are for babies. Just let go already. Regards, a 7-year-old.
Dear 7-year-old, no matter what anyone says, stay weird. Signed, an 8-year-old.
Dear 8-year-old, find out your babysitter's weakness, then use it against them. Signed, a 9-year-old.
Dear 9-year-olds, don't get involved with the popular kids. They're narcissistic capitalists that know nothing about politics. Signed, a 12-year-old.
Dear 12-year-old, ask her to dance. Just trust me on this one. Signed, a 16-year-old.
Dear 16-year-old, don't let your mom throw away your Legos. Signed, an 18-year-old.
Dear 18-year-old, go easy on the makeup. You're not as ugly as you think. Love, a 19-year-old.
Dear 19-year-old, just because it's an all-you-can-eat buffet does not mean you need to eat all you can.
Your parents have better interest rates than your credit card. If he says he has a weekend home in the suburbs, he's married.
That rust protection undercoating, it's actually a great deal.
Whatever you do, never order the salad from a truck stop.
Back up your hard drive. Now.
I mean, who even does that?
Getting laid off can be a blessing in disguise.
Being a starving artist only works if you actually make art.
Always be kind to your family. You'll need each other when things get tough.
Stop panicking. Being a single mom is an incredible thing. I was 22. I had this little kid. I named him Vladimir. He's 14 now. He makes me proud. So,
Dear 36-year-old, stop caring so much about what other people think. They're not thinking about you at all. Signed, a 47-year-old.
Dear 47-year-old, a midlife crisis does not look good on you. Signed, a 48-year-old.
Dear 48-year-old, always tell the truth, except when it comes to your online dating profile.
Dear 51-year-old, one cat is enough cats. Signed, a 53-year-old.
Dear 53-year-old, it's never too late to try something new. I've decided to take my husband's Corvette and go to racing school. If Paul Newman could do it, why can't I?
Dear 72-year-old, spend all your money. Otherwise, your kids are going to do it for you. Sincerely, an 85-year-old.
Dear 85-year-old, indulge your sweet tooth. You'll need dentures soon anyway. My late wife made the best apple pie that you could ever find. When she cut the pieces, she would cut small ones, and when she came to me, she would cut a big one.
Dear 88-year-old, cultivate younger friends. Otherwise, yours will all die off. Sincerely, 91 years old.
Dear 91-year-old, don't listen to other people's advice. Nobody knows what the hell they're doing. Signed, a 93-year-old. Just do your own thing. That's the way I say it.
The popular kids they're so shallow. They like hashtags and pop culture, and it's like, I don't care. That's never going to be relevant in the future.
If your babysitter hates feet, do a handstand and then put your feet right in their face.
Have you ever done that before?
No, but I'm willing to.
Dear 70-year-old, stay weird. Signed, a 72-year-old. I think that went good.
By the time I was 5, aside from kids' music, I already had my first 2 favorite albums, Michael Jackson's Bad and Born in the USA by Bruce Springsteen. As a 6 or 7-year-old, I remember pressing play on Born in the USA, laying down on the floor and following along with the lyrics in the booklet as the music played, trying to puzzle out the meaning of the words. Phrases like working on the highway and born in the USA made literal sense. So did dancing in the dark, even if I didn't understand the metaphor behind it. One song that I definitely did not understand the meaning of was Glory Days, about a man looking back on his so-called glory days. It wasn't until I was in my 30s, around the same age as Springsteen when he wrote it, when I could finally relate to the song and start to grasp its warning. I think I'm going down to the well tonight, and I'm going to drink till I get my fill. And I hope when I get old, I don't sit around thinking about it, but I probably will. Yeah, just sitting back, trying to recapture a little of the glory, yeah. Well, time slips away and leaves you with nothing, mister, but boring stories of glory days. Now, I don't think this has to be true, that we get caught in the past. Nor do I think there's anything inherently wrong with reminiscing and remembering good times long past. It's only a problem if we get stuck ruminating about how great things used to be, typically through rose-tinted glasses, to such a degree that we can't appreciate what it is that we currently have. And so sometimes it takes some soul-searching, like the sort that Phil talked about in his reflection, to find new perspectives, to find new meaning in life as we grow older. Last week, I mentioned the perception that people get grumpy as they get older. But on average, it's actually true that people tend to be happier as they get older, more patient, more content, more comfortable in their own skin, even if there may still be yearning for those glory days. Letting those things that one worries about can be a huge release. And as someone who is still in the middle of my career, I can imagine what a relief it is to be retired. Or to have your kids out of the house, for instance. I think all of these things help contribute to our sense of well-being and happiness, even as our physical capacities might decline. That wisdom that we gain throughout the years can have a really profound impact on the way we move through the world. So many different, in that last video, so many different pieces of advice, sometimes contradictory, as we try to figure out how to live our best lives. But as Todd mentioned earlier, this morning I don't just want to focus on people. I also want to think about our church and how institutions grow and change with the times. It's been 70 years since the founding group of 5 families started meeting together out of a desire for a religious education program and concern for social justice issues. And things have changed a lot over the past 70 years. When Emerson was founded, one of the things that the Unitarian Church, we weren't a Unitarian Universalist church yet, had to offer was a place where you didn't have to believe a certain truth about God or the lack thereof, a place that was, as the hymn goes, free from narrow thought and lifeless creed. Now, at that time in American life, there was a social expectation that you would go to church on Sunday, or perhaps synagogue on Friday, or temple. During the Cold War, as Americans were in the battle with godless communism, not attending church was often seen as un-American, and so people went to church. Yet the Unitarian Church provided a space where you didn't have to believe a particular thing in order to be a member. You could ask questions. Heck, you could even be a godless communist.
There are a lot of those.
And perhaps unsurprisingly, given those details, at that time we had a large number of scientists and engineers. And by the 1960s, the Unitarian Universalism, in part riding the baby boom, was also booming here in the United States. But over the past several decades, really starting in the 90s in particular, and picking up over time, there's been a dramatic shift in our American culture, particularly white American culture, with regards to religion, where there's no longer an expectation that you had to go to church on Sunday. So nowadays, if you're an atheist or an agnostic, you don't have to find the local Unitarian Universalist church. Or if you're looking for something less rigid, well, rather than coming here, you just sleep in, or read the Sunday newspaper, or go out to brunch, or take your kids out to Little League games, which are now scheduled on Sunday mornings instead. And so, out of this, the fastest growing demographic group in the country are the nuns, those with no religious identity at all, many of whom also may identify with the term spiritual but not religious. And they don't come to church regularly or at all. And religion is on decline across the board. The Catholic Church, mainline Protestants have been declining at much faster rates than Unitarian Universalists. Ours has been a slower decline starting in about 2009, although our religious education went through a much more rapid shift starting in about 2002. I know as a minister, I have a nostalgia for being part of a religious education program where, growing up, there were 6 to 8 other kids, including 3 Davids, just in the same grade as me. Nowadays, especially since the pandemic, a majority of our congregations would feel pretty good about having 6 to 8 kids total show up on a Sunday. As the Reverend Peter Morales, past president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, writes, one way of thinking about changes in religion today is to view them as an enormous problem. Another way to think of our situation is that there is a huge spiritual hunger, and that millions upon millions of unaffiliated people constitute a breathtaking opportunity. A lot of young people are leaving their churches because of their church's stance on political and social issues. At a time when school boards are banning books and curriculum, and any curriculum that acknowledges the existence of institutional racism or LGBTQ people, amidst a broader push by state and local governments attacking the rights of LGBTQ people, of attacking reproductive rights, often in the name of religion. I think we have something powerful to offer, something that people are looking for. Those who left their previous religious homes, who have experience being part of religious communities and are looking for a place where they can bring their whole selves. I'm sure that applies to that story applies to more than a handful of those of you already here. And I think there is a possibility there, but it requires being open to a wide variety of beliefs. As Todd mentioned, we are no longer a predominantly humanist congregation. Over the past couple decades, in order to live into that expansive sense of welcome, we have strived to become more welcoming to people for whom God is a central spiritual touchstone, and to embrace religious words that we kind of shied away from, like worship and faith and holy. Even if it means we have to take those words and translate them and make them work for ourselves. I know for me as an agnostic who doesn't necessarily believe in God or disbelieve in God, it's not something it's not how I derive meaning, and yet I can take that word God and find definitions of it that work for me, find translations of it that are meaningful for me. And so I think that is part of the work that we have been called to do, and I think as Unitarian Universalists we have done a good job of living into that here at Emerson, of living into that change, of really embracing a multitude of perspectives, as represented here by our mobile. As Prima Morales says, we want to embrace the possibilities inherent in these uncertain times. We are not reconciled to being a declining part of American religious life. We have too much to offer, and the world needs our prophetic and compassionate voice. Now, thinking back on Emerson's history, one thing that hasn't changed very much is that commitment to justice work in our communities and out in the wider world. I mentioned with those first 5 families who would start meeting in what would become Emerson Unitarian Church at the time. That was one of the things that they were looking for, was to be more active in justice work. And so as times have changed, maybe the justice issues that are at the forefront have shifted somewhat, but that narrative thread has been part of our history here at Emerson and as part of our wider Unitarian Universalist tradition. Last week we had a teach-in on Palestine, and it got me thinking about one of the other pieces of our history, about back in 1971, a teach-in, or actually a pro-con forum about Cuba. I decided not to talk about it beforehand because what happened the night before the pro-con forum, someone who was displeased that it was happening broke into the church and took the minister's sermons and lit them on fire underneath the grand piano and burned the building down. Yes, that was about 6 years after the previous minister's house had been firebombed over his activity around civil rights work here in the valley. And so to be able to stick out our neck, at that point, the San Fernando Valley was more politically conservative than it is today, and I'm grateful that our sanctuary is unharmed, and we had a really, I think, positive and productive conversation together, program together. But that's been part of our history of being engaged in justice issues, of being engaged in the sanctuary movement in the 1980s, of offering sanctuary to Salvadoran refugees, to offering support to homeless folks. Back before, we've lost 2 buildings, for those of you who don't know. This is the second building on this location after the previous one was leveled by the earthquake. So another part of our history, I think, is our resilience and a story of coming back from adversity. But back, in fact, that morning of the Northridge quake, we were housing a homeless family in the basement as part of the Family Promise program. And so these pieces of being there to support our community, to be active in the wider world, whether that's connecting with our Muslim colleagues or our Muslim neighbors at the Islamic Society of the West Valley, around what's happening in Gaza, or back in 2017, the Friday before the inauguration of Donald Trump, joining together in a show of solidarity, knowing that Islamophobia was on the rise. And once again, as both Islamophobia and anti-Semitism are both significantly reignited since 2016, and particularly in the past 6 months, knowing that we need to show up in solidarity for people in both communities who feel targeted, who feel vulnerable. And I think, and to continue living into that. One of the other major changes, of course, is what's going on with our climate. We live in a rapidly changing climate with a lot of uncertainty, and we live in a world where the political world seems even more destabilized and uncertain. And so we ask ourselves, what does it mean to be a religious community in these times? What would it mean for us to age gracefully, to move into the next stage of our life as Emerson Unitarian Universalist Church? What are the great needs of our world that our congregations are uniquely poised to meet? At this critical juncture, our world needs our congregations to be models of a life-sustaining society that we want to create, a society that supports people, that works for justice, that tries to build community resilience, and is active as a hub for the community and not just on Sunday mornings. As much as we may love our Sunday worship, faith development classes, potlucks, and for some of us, even committee meetings, these alone will not carry us into the new age. And yet, I think we have a great foundation from which to work. Not just a part of it is our history, but also just our religious communities by nature being places of connection and support, places where we can find hope when we despair, where we can find comfort when we are hurting, when we can join our voices and our hands together as we work for a better world. That's a great place to start as we continue to explore how this community might grow and stretch to meet the needs of this changing world. Maybe this looks like a weeknight meditation, a different sort of service, more musically focused, or being out in the community more and listening to what is needed here, right around us. Maybe there have been ideas that you're percolating on, or maybe now's the time to experiment. One of the things that I've been trying to put some effort in is, we've been engaged with the West Valley Food Pantry for the past, since its founding in the mid-'80s, and a supporter of that. And, I noticed that the West Valley Food Pantry is relatively far away, and especially for people who don't have access to transportation. It's also only open Monday through Friday during business hours. And so what about people who are working and yet still struggling to make ends meet? So I've started conversations with the folks at the West Valley Food Pantry about maybe we could possibly have this be a distribution site on Saturday. I don't know if it's possible. The conversations are on a temporary hold because they're in the middle of a major expansion project and building a new property. But I'm hopeful for that possibility because I think it might be a really great way to be of greater service to our local community. And so I don't have all the answers, but I believe together we have great wisdom and courage. It's both exciting and a little scary because we don't really know what that future Emerson looks like. How do you prepare for an uncertain future? And I don't think there aren't other churches that have truly figured out what this means, but we aren't alone either. There are fellow travelers leaning into this challenge alongside us who we can learn from and grow with. I think one of our major recent pivot points was being able to go online during the pandemic to serve people that way, and then coming back, being able to offer a hybrid service so that we can reach people who have a hard time because of health or other issues making it to church on Sunday morning, and being able to offer that. So we are stepping out into a different world, and we need a congregation that is grounded enough to weather the coming storms and also nimble enough to be adaptive and to respond to crises which have already started and will keep coming with courage and grace, with resilience and care, gentleness and strength in order to be able to serve the wider community. The spiritual challenge, one of the spiritual challenges that we face in these times, Peter Morales writes, is that Unitarian Universalism, the future health of Unitarian Universalism depends on us all learning to embrace failure. Embrace failure? Absolutely, he says. The thought of failing at something is pretty frightening. I like to be thought of as competent. I like triumph, small and large, and I love feeling respected for the things I accomplish. But yet in times like these, if we limit ourselves to what we already know how to do, we will never imagine new possibilities and seize them. That's the danger of getting stuck in those glory days, of just trying to remember how it used to be back in the good old days. But the thing is, the good old days will never be here again. And so if we keep trying to recreate that, we'll only end up disappointed. What that looks like, again, I don't know, and we will have to figure that out together. And in 70 years from now, we'll still be growing and changing and figuring out what can Unitarian Universalism offer the world then. Peter Morales says, change can be hard. The familiar is comfortable, yet we must remind ourselves that we are the spiritual heirs of people who are willing to leave the past behind in order to embrace the future. We must not let fear paralyze us. And so, let us go forth in love, in courage, in a willingness to try and fail, in resolve, and in peace. Before we sing our closing hymn, just a quick a gratitude to everyone who helped participate in making this service possible. Todd and Phil for offering that reflection, to Kevin, to the folks up in the tech booth, and the folks at the welcome desk, and those who set up for coffee hour, and those who don't know it yet, but will help clean up coffee hour. All of that is appreciated, and all of it is what makes this church go. And then also our environmental justice ministry team is meeting after the service here in the sanctuary. So please come for that as well. And now I invite you to rise in body or in spirit and join in sing out praises for the journey.
Sing out praises for the journey, pilgrims we who carry on, searchers in the soul's deep yearning, like our forebears in their time. We seek out the Spirit's wholeness in the endless human quest. Look inside your souls, the kindling of the hearth fire pilgrims do. Find the Spirit, always restless, find it in each mind and heart. Touch and hold that ancient yearning, kindling for the newfound truth. Stand we now upon the threshold, facing futures yet unknown. Hearth behind us, wayside hostel, built by those who knew the wild roads. Guard we ere the sacred embers carried in our minds and hearts.
And now, as our service comes to a close, I invite you to, as you feel comfortable, to reach out and take a hand or bump elbows, touch a shoulder, make some sort of connection as you feel comfortable. To those of you joining us online, we invite you to send your energy out to us and to each other as we send it back to you. I send you out now to share yourself with the world. May its promise and complexity set your mind ablaze. May you hold fast to what your life has taught you. May you question everything. And when you have changed the world and the world has changed you, may you return again to this place and share what you have learned with us. Amen, Ashe, and blessed be.